Hi, it's Joe Mazumdar from Exploration Insights at the Metals Investor Forum, the first one of January 2022. So happy New Year and welcome. We're doing the backstage interviews now, and my first backstage interview is with Trilogy Metals CEO, Tony Giardini. Hi, Tony, how's it going?
It's going great, and I'm glad to be the first of your backstage interviews. And as you said, Happy New Year, everyone. Looking forward to an exciting 2022.
So as we're looking at 2022, I mean, Trilogy has a 50% stake in the Arctic and the Bornite projects in Alaska, and copper dominant polymetallic deposit with Arctic, and then a copper cobalt, more of an advanced stage exploration project with Bornite. Both a significant grade and both in joint ventures with South 32. So in terms of the copper market, how do you see, it happening, like your projects moving into, from feasibility study now into permitting stage and, and potentially hopefully into construction. How does that fit into what you're seeing with the copper market and the copper supply right now?
Yeah, I think we're in a really strong position in terms of the copper space right now. We've had, obviously strong performance in terms of a price well over 440. It seems to be holding its own. Goldman's been calling for over $5 copper, and it just feels like it wants to at least go up there and have a look. And the thing is,
what was your PFS study copper price?
Everything was done at $3. We did the PFS at 3, and we did the FS at 3. And what I'm finding really interesting about the market dynamics right now is that the impact that inflation is going to have on a lot of these projects as they're going forward. And because Arctic is such a high grade deposit, it's 4.2% copper equivalent, 43.4 million tons. The only other project out there that is similar to Arctic, and it's better, is Kamoa-Kakula. And I know a little bit about Kamoa-Kakula because I was the president of Ivanhoe. And so I can tell you that we're really fortunate to have the type of grade that we have and to be in the jurisdiction that we're in. And I think the copper fundamentals are very positive, but I think as part of our story, the fact that we've got such a high grade deposit and we've got a low capital intensity ratio per equivalent ton of copper production puts us in a very advantageous position, even if we do have inflationary pressures on capital and on the cost side.
So, I mean, a study I've done for our subscribers at Exploration Insights, where it was looking at the margins and the cost escalation on operating and capital costs. And one thing I did notice is that for precious metals companies, that their margins seem to be compressing because potentially of a flat precious metal price and hitting the higher costs. But in terms of base metal companies, they seem to be expanding their margins despite the cost inflation. Again, I'd be waiting to see what the fourth quarter results look like, but that's what I'm seeing so far. But in the background, we're seeing Magino blow out their capital in Northern Ontario. And then recently, South 32 put out like $1 billion number with respect to the upfront capital requirement with their Hermoso zinc dominant project in Arizona. Mind you, some people are comparing it to a $500 million number that came from a 2018 scoping study that was done by the junior company. So where do you think your number sits, and then in terms of where it could grow, because we're seeing 20% in terms of cost inflation?
I think so. I think first of all, the first thing to stress is that these are Trilogy numbers, are not Trilogy South 32 numbers, are not Ambler Metal numbers. We did the PFS in 2017. We did the FS in 2020. We used the same engineering firms. So there's Woods, there's SRK. They're in the mix, and we haven't really had and Cinco's in there. We haven't really had any changes in terms of the engineering companies, and we used the same price tag. So essentially, what you saw on Arctic was that the MPV came down because capital went up a bit, but we're still 27% IRR on a $3 copper price basis. And I think the interesting comment is metal prices. And the thing about Arctic that's really exciting is that it's a polymetallic deposit. So it's not just about copper, because copper at $3 is one thing, but then zinc, there's lots of zinc in that deposit, and zinc's at $1.60 right now. We've got essentially 80,000 ounces a year of gold equivalent if we take and convert the silver into gold equivalent ounces. So we're benefiting from a polymetallic nature of a deposit in terms of the economics. And I look at our capital intensity, it's about $7,300 per equivalent ton. And even if we looked at a 10%, even if we looked at a 20% increase in capital, it doesn't really move the needle significantly in terms of the capital intensity per equivalent ton of copper production, because we're already one of the best companies out there, if not the best in terms of that metric. So there could be some impact for sure on capital inflation, but it's a 2020 study. We used the same engineering firms, and we feel pretty good about the numbers. And in fact, what's happened now is that Ambler Metals, which is a JV company, is using the same firms to go to the next phase of study work. And I wouldn't say that there aren't going to be some capital items that will impact us, but there's no fatal flaws from what we're hearing at this point in terms of, really significantly mixed capital. And there's some positive elements with respect to how we're looking at, water treatment and selenium, for example, in terms of the timing of when we would need a water treatment plant and how long that plant would need to run for. I think one of the questions that we need to look at is the pit and the pit design and those implications and better understand that. But I would say we feel pretty good about how the numbers are holding up so far.
Okay, so in terms of right now, the performance last year, like you peaked around, I think it was like May or something like that, but the price, the share price has been declining since, even in, like we said, in a relatively buoyant copper market, and I think, as you pointed out prior to the off camera, that Goldman Sachs is now putting in a plus $5 copper price long term because of the supply shortage. So what would you basically put the underperformance at with respect to Trilogy?
I think it's a couple of things. I was looking at that today, and I went back to sort of March 2020 and sort of looked at price performance since then, and we've been flat, and the copper price has moved up dramatically. And if you look at some developers like Western Copper's been a double. If you look at Philos, they've been like 13 times, and I think we've been flat. And I don't think it's because there hasn't been good news. There has. I think it's a couple of things on our part, Joe. One is we didn't have any drilling in 2020. That hurt us. We've had drilling in 2021, but we haven't been able to get the results out because of a backlog on the lab side. We've only had 4 drill holes that have come out so far. One of those, by the way, you're a geologist, was an infill hole of 12% copper over 20 meters. So,
and I think it was one of the best results.
It's the third best hole out of 176 holes that have ever been drilled at Arctic. So we think this is really an opportunity for people to come into the story in an area where copper has more than doubled or almost doubled, let's say, and the stock's essentially flat. And there's been some very good news about where we're going. And people shouldn't lose sight of the fact that South 32 has invested $200 million into Trilogy and the Ambler Mine District. They've staked additional ground in and around the Arctic project and in the Ambler Mining District outside of the JV. So they're reaffirming their commitment to where we're at. We've got a lot of cash in the JV to fund our $28 million program this year and continue to move the project forward. We're going to start the permitting process. And I think it's one of those things where people are going to look back at this opportunity and they're going to sit there and say, hey, the stock was sort of sitting around those levels. I should have bought it when I could have. And I didn't. And the street is littered with those kind of stories. And we all personally have them ourselves.
Yes. So I guess, like, going for anybody that might want to enter right now, that $28 million budget, I guess that's US.
Yes.
What does that translate to with respect to news flow? I know you have pending holes coming from the previous season that are still coming out.
Yeah, so we're talking about 10,000 meters of drilling that's going to happen this year. We're going to have 3 drills going. We're also going to be doing some additional mapping work and geochem work in terms of just better understanding the geology. We're finalizing the exploration strategy right now. And then we're doing a fair bit of technical work in terms of advancement of the project as a whole. And lastly, we expect to start the permitting process in March. So there'll be a big increase in terms of what we're spending on permitting that we didn't spend last year. So those will be the major budget areas. And the 28 million, Joe, I know we're out of time, but 28 million doesn't include any expenditures on the road. We're going to be coming out with a road budget fairly soon. And that road budget is split 50-50 between ourselves and ADA, which is part of the state of Alaska.
50-50 meaning Ambler, which is 50-50.
Ambler plays half.
Too.
Yeah, Ambler plays half and Beta pays half. And so the idea there is to continue to advance a road, focus on the detailed engineering, set ourselves up for a position where, you know, when we're ready to make the investment decision, we're able to hit the ground running on the road.
Okay. And the road's obviously a big deal as well.
Road's a big deal.
Permitting around.
Opening up the district, but it's also a big deal within the communities, and the communities, you know, are concerned about subsistence hunting and fishing. And so we need to be very respectful of those communities and make sure that there could continue dialogue and communication in terms of where the road's going and how we're looking at the caribou herds and how we're managing activities so that we're not impacting the subsistence hunting and fishing in the area. And we have to make sure that when that road is put into operation, that the communities themselves are also going to see some real benefits in terms of their cost of living coming down. Because right now, for example, a lot of those communities rely on diesel and other supplies being helicoptered in or flown in. And so having an all-weather road that goes in there, that's a private access road only, but if it can be used to help bring the cost of living down for some of those remote communities, I think that will really help a lot as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tony, for that update from Trilogy Metals, who's advancing the Arctic and also potentially drilling the Bornite asset.
We're really excited about Bornite. Some news is going to be coming out soon on that. People should come and visit the website, trilogymetals.com. Lots of information, ticker symbol TMQ, Toronto and New York. Thanks again, Joe.
Great. Thank you very much. That's me, Joe Mazumdar, Exploration Insights at the Metals Investment Forum, January 2022. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.